Morning pop pickers, Friday morning. Hope you're well. Another very warm morning. Cheers. I heard this morning on the radio about the heat yesterday, that it broke some record, I'm not sure. Certainly the hottest day of the year, but I don't know if they said it was the hottest day on record. But certainly the hottest day of the year. I think it approached something like 39 degrees, something like that, in certain places, or 37 degrees. Insanely hot for our usually clement climate. Our climate has always been celebrated as being somewhere in between, you know, not too hot, not too cold. Yes, a bit wet and cloudy, but generally unoppressive. But it certainly seems to be going in the direction of some of the hotter countries of the world. There seems to be some kind of pattern emerging. I don't know if it's a consistent pattern or if it's well, it can't be an inconsistent pattern, can it? Can it? No, I guess not. It wouldn't be a pattern then, it would be random. But yeah, certainly seeing a lot of hot weather. And they were talking this morning about on Nigel Farage's program this morning. They were talking about water wastage, and people are calling in absolutely fuming. Let me get a pipe on. I'm kind of tempted to keep yesterday's pipe. I haven't been able to show this in my morning chat for a while now because I haven't made a pipe, but this is the pipe I made yesterday. Absolute stunner. Perfect sizing. A beautiful twisted sterling silver ring, which is from the new bunch of rings that I purchased whilst I was on vacation. A classic black and red Cumberland stem. Let's get some light on there. There you can see the colour a bit better. Nice markings. A rounded saddle. And some nice varied grain, perfectly drilled. And I also went to the trouble of polishing the shank face, which I don't always do, because I find that if you want to get a very good marrying of the stem to the shank, oops, nearly went in the coffee. That's because of how highly polished it is. It's a little bit slippery. I better move the coffee away. I find generally it's best to leave the shank alone. So I stain it, but I don't polish it, and because I want it to have a really good connection. But sometimes I do, and certainly when I've got something on like this, a band of some kind on the shank, which sort of covers the connection a little bit, then it's not such a big issue. But on this occasion I just went the extra, and as I say, polished the shank face. It's a lovely band, this, really, really nice, made by hand. So I've said it a number of times now in my videos. I met a guy at the market at Ludlow Castle. So we've been in or around Hereford quite a lot of times over the years. This year was probably our 5th or 6th time that we've been to that region. And so we invariably, at some point during the vacation, we end up at Ludlow Castle. And there's a market right in front of the castle, usually, I don't know, I think it's 3 days a week. So there's always a good chance. We don't usually plan it, we're not as organised as that. '66. We're not usually as organised as that. But so some days we get there. There is a market, sometimes not. Anyway, this time we got there, and the market was there. I will say that the market was a little bit sparse this time. In past times, I don't know if it was just the timing. I would imagine that, because I think they do it Monday, maybe one Monday, Wednesday, Friday or Saturday. I'm not sure. I would imagine that the nearer to the weekend that it gets, it's probably busier. I don't think all the stands were there. But there were enough people there. Anyway, I saw this guy with lots of silver jewellery on his stand. I bought my daughter a pair of earrings from there, and right at the end of the stand I noticed a box, a little compartmentalized box, you know, it's maybe a foot by a foot with lots of little, maybe 20 or so little compartments. And I looked through them and I could see these bands, and they just all looked really charming, really nice. So I selected a bunch. I picked out, they were £20 each, and I said to him, how about 6 for £100? He said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I was chuffed with that, and so I said to him, do you make this on a regular basis? Is it something that you have access to all the time? He said, yeah, he does it himself. So he has the turning, the engines, the what do you call them, he has the stuff anyway to put patterns on the rings themselves. This one is just a twisted one. He twists it himself and then solders it. But I think I did show these yesterday or the day before. But he has the turning, whatever you call them, to put different designs on the rings. Okay, this one is, that one's hammered, which I like a lot. It's got a nice sort of edge on it. There you can see the different designs. That's a raindrop, that's sort of X's or kisses, those are the hearts. And what's this one? This is like a diamond kind of pattern. Anyway, they're very nice. So I said to him, perhaps we can be in touch and work something out. So he said, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm not even sure where the card is. I think I put it in my bag. I'm gonna have to find that card because that's a good connection. I don't want to lose it. So I do have to send them an email. And what I'll do is, whenever I've got a little bit of spare funds, I'm just going to order them, because I don't know how long he's going to be in business for. So it'd be nice to just have them in stock. To be honest with you, they're not cheap. I could probably find them elsewhere, cheaper, and maybe some Chinese made stuff or that kind of thing. But I like the charm of these. I like the fact that they're handmade, and they have just a certain charm. Like I say, they have a certain charm about them, and I like them. I don't know, I just connected with them. If you Americans will probably be familiar, some of you will be familiar with a pipe maker called Larry Roosh. He used to do his own silver work, and some of it quite similar to that. Where was I? Sorry, I had a long phone call, which I had to take, and I'm not sure what I was saying before. Wearing the most recent acquisition, the Okinawa, I think I'll call it, because it's been designed based on the diving area in Okinawa, the water and the sands in Okinawa. So I think the Okinawa is a good name for it. Anyway, this morning I did consider whether to keep this one myself. This is really right up my alley, size wise, shape wise. Yep, I'm going to give it a couple of days, and if it doesn't go, it shall be added to my collection. My collection has dwindled, as you know. I sold the limited edition Crown Series. I sold the fidget spinner poker recently. In terms of my own LCS pipes, what have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty much 4 pipes. I've got the 626, got the Rosebud, Dad. I've got the early bent billiard, and I've got Mum's, so that's 5. But in terms of what I smoke regularly, it's 2 or 3 pipes at the moment. I've been watching the Clacton by-election. Results came in overnight, I think, and Nigel Farage has been re-elected. If you recall, he resigned due to the 5 million donation, gift, whatever you want to call it, fiasco. A sum of money which he says he was given as a gift, as a reward for his quarter of a century of work to this country, for this country. But then he said it was actually for security, because he needs security because his life is being threatened all the time, and the authorities continuously refuse to give him the security that he needs. So Nick Ferrari was replaying a clip of an interview he had with him a while ago. Asking him to clarify whether it was a gift or whether it was money for security. And it was a little bit cloudy, his responses, but I think the point he was trying to make was that it was a gift, but that he would use it, he's allowed to use it for whatever he likes, but his needs are that he needs to have security, and that's what he's likely to spend the money on. He resigned over this £5 million business, and that's what created the void and required the by-election, which he's now gone and won again in Clacton. And he was up against Count Binface. I haven't looked into it, I don't know what that's all about, but it's basically a guy with a dustbin over his head. So there's obviously some, I guess it's either it's some political statement or it's just some loon. I honestly haven't looked into that. I don't know what that is about. But then he didn't attend the count. So when he was given the results and formally reinstated as MP for Clacton, he didn't attend. That's very unusual. When asked why he didn't attend, he answered, apparently, again according to Nick Farage, he answered that he didn't want to be amongst people who would demean him. Something along those lines. And then one of his colleagues that said that the reason is because there are security issues. His life's continuously threatened, and his security team advised him not to go. But the police said that there was no active threat, and they had put in a robust police strategy for that announcement. But they had no active threat against Nigel Farage, or something along those lines. So again, Nick Farage was trying to establish what is the reason why he didn't attend, and to show a contrast, he mentioned Margaret Thatcher, funnily enough, I mentioned the other day, who attended her own by-election in East Finchley a very short while after a close colleague of hers had been blown up by the IRA in a car bomb. So a much more serious threat in those days. The IRA were a real threat. Whereas Nigel Farage decided not to attend because of claimed security issues, where the police have said there is no real issue. I'd be quite happy to accept what Farage's team has said, because the police at the end of the day will manage things. They'll have their police presence and they'll be keeping an eye on things, but you could understand if Farage and his team were a little bit more nervous given some of their political standpoints. But my question is this, and I don't know why Nick didn't ask this. He was in Clacton-on-Sea, which is where he was re-elected, where he's got a strong base. Why was he feeling under threat? I don't know. That seems a bit odd to me. Unless you have, again, I'm not that au fait with the political scene there, but unless the fight between the parties for that seat was such that you have quite a split community, and maybe the community that he's fighting against, let's say, the migrants, etc., or the people that he wants to send out of the country, even if they're a minority then, but even so, they may be a minority which he fears. I was talking about Thames Water, I think, before. And so he had some people on who were extremely annoyed. They've been without water for 5 days. Yet there was a massive leak. I don't remember the area, Stowbridge maybe, something like that. Yet in that area there was a massive water leak, we had this actually ourselves, literally just around the corner here, where the power of the water leaking coming up through the road was so powerful that it created essentially a river running down the street. And it's exactly what we had here. And they left it for a long time before they came and repaired it. It was there for like a week or two. But this place where they were talking about, they've had that leak there for months, I think they're saying. And that's the amount of water that's being wasted, clean water, and it's all over a stupid dispute. So apparently they can't go and repair it because there's a BT post you know, a pole where they have the phone lines connected. So nowadays you don't see them in big cities so much, but I mean we still have them here, but certainly in more rural areas you still see them everywhere, where rather than having cables underground, they're overground, and they're on, I don't know what you call them, but telephone poles essentially. And apparently so that area belongs to the BT, I think it's BT, where the pole is, and the leak apparently is coming up through there, and Thames Water can't get in because there's a dispute about whether they can go in or not, or something, I don't know. And the water has been going for so long that the post is now has become rotten, and it's starting to keel over. And the whole thing's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. The government needs to step in and sort these people out, you know. It's absolutely ridiculous. The amount of wastage, and Thames Water is just charging an absolute fortune, but the amount of wastage that they allow to happen is criminal. They should have some kind of like emergency response team, which I'm sure they have, but they obviously need more. As soon as a leak is identified, they need to literally get out there and deal with it overnight. You see the way some other countries like Japan and these kind of places where they have this situation, it's done, literally, it's done and dusted within a day. And when we're talking about the water levels being critical, and they're allowing such amounts of water to be wasted, somebody should be charged over it. It's ridiculous. And we get charged astronomical amounts for the water because of all the loss. And they're allowing that profit to go down the drain, literally down the drain. I think it's criminal, especially when the country is going through a drought of record levels. I can imagine why that whole area there would be angry and frustrated. They have no water. They haven't had water for 5 days in this heat. Never mind being able to have showers and wash up and flush the toilet. No, they need water to drink to survive in this heat. So bottled water is being provided, from what I understand. And in order to flush the toilet, they're having to fill the toilets with bottled water. You know, if it happened and it was a day or two, fine. And even if it is a week, but they're working on it, but they're not even working on it. Totally unacceptable. Part of the problem is that we've sold off all our utilities, and which is, I don't understand how that was allowed to happen. I don't know whether it was Conservative or Labour, whoever did that, whichever party did it. I think that's ridiculous. How can you sell off your own national control? How can you sell off control of your own nation's utilities? If there were to be some kind of global conflagration, and for whatever reason, let's say E.ON, I think, is one of the biggest electric supply companies in this country. I think the majority is owned by a French company. Imagine we had some kind of issue with France. It's happened before. And they just switch off our juice. The war's over. You know, if you haven't got electricity, you're stuffed. You can't do anything without electricity nowadays. So even if you have coal and all of that, but that's just to feed the generators, so that you can get electricity. At the end of the day, it's electricity that you use for most things. The power stations, I should say, not generators. I think the majority of power stations nowadays are nuclear. So not reliant on coal, but still the principle is the same. If most of our electricity is coming from another country, or is owned by another country, it would seem like treason to me to sell off a utility company in that runs your country, to me, would seem treasonous. It just seems logical you wouldn't do that. Anything crucial like water, gas, electricity, to sell that off to another country, that it doesn't make any sense. It's like, I don't know, sell off the House of Commons, the running of the House of Commons, sell it off to another country. It's something which is crucial to the running of the country, and you sell it off to another country. It doesn't make any sense. I guess it was at a time when Europe was in the ascendant in terms of becoming a unified entity. I'm sure the grand dream was for Europe to be something like the United States of America. So although you've got your 51 states or whatever it is, when people outside of America talk about America, they don't talk about Oklahoma, Ohio, California. They talk about America. It's just America. The unification of America was, let's be honest, one of the most, I'm not saying it's successful in its day-to-day running, in the red tape and all of that bureaucracy, but in reality, as far as the rest of the world are concerned, the unification of the States of America was extremely successful. It's a very successful singular entity, although it's made up of constituent parts, and a lot of power is given to each constituent part, but ultimately there is federal control, and it's known around the world as the United States of America. So, you know, if there were to be some war with America, they wouldn't say we're at war with New York. They'd say we're at war with America. I don't think the EU worked out quite as well. The EU is I don't know enough about the history of America and how that all came about. Obviously the revolution and kicking us Brits out, fair enough. But how that union came along, I don't know enough about the history about that. But why it didn't stay as 50 discrete states, I don't know. Like I say, I don't know enough about it. But in Europe, I suppose that in America, because it was born out of a struggle, it was born out of a revolution where everybody had to basically get together in order to kick the Brits out, and therefore there was a unification automatically. But here you're talking about a bunch of different countries in Europe which were running fine, and there was no struggle to break free from an overlord, if you like, another country that was running them. They were independent countries which were running fine. Were there advantages to joining Europe together? I guess plenty, you know, mostly economical, but was there a need? Was there an urgent need for each country feeling, we're not doing as well as we could, let's get together with everybody else and we'll do a lot better? So I guess that feeling of that unification doesn't really work. And if you look at all of those countries in Europe, lots of them still have monarchies. So it's you know, as long as you've got monarchies, you're not going to be able to join up as a single entity. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, a couple of the stories on the news today. Like I say, with Nigel Farage, I don't really know whether he's a good guy, whether he's not a good guy. You know, oftentimes I talk about politicians, I'm not talking about the politics, I'm talking about the people as they come across as characters, and to me, he doesn't come across as a particularly nice character. There's a certain undercurrent of nefariousness, it's a word I've been using a bit recently, about him. There is this sort of evasive kind of attitude that you get from him, and that just doesn't smack well. It just doesn't feel right to me. Because I can't put my finger on anything in particular, but comes across as a bit of a slippery fellow, you know. As they would say in Yes Minister, I don't think he's sound. You have a situation of him, he's in politics, he's out of politics, he's MP, he's resigned an MP. He, you know, previously he was the head of, what was the party that he was the head of originally? It wasn't called Reform, it was called, let's see, the Brexit party. So now he's the Reform UK since June 24, and formerly the Brexit party as a right-wing populist and far-right political party. Now that he's been re-elected, the inquiry is going to be restarted into this £5 million stuff. It was halted once he resigned, and I guess he was hoping that would go away, and when he re-elected. So I think it's a lot of, there's technical things here. So if you get given a big sum of money, you have to declare it as a politician, as an MP. And I think he was arguing that he got that money before he became an MP. But I think the rules do state that it's expected, it's good form. I don't know if it's a legal requirement, but it's generally expected, good practice, that if you did get something, even before you became an MP, that you declare it. And I think he's sort of more looking at the letter of the law and saying that that was when I was a private citizen, mind your own business, essentially. Reform certainly has had a bit of a headwind, had a wind behind it. I wonder how that's going, whether that's still going strong. I have noticed that the Conservative Party, Kevin Badenoch, has announced a few things which, I think that's purely political attempt to bring people who are going after reform, to bring them back into the Conservative fold. Migration things, I can't remember the exact thing, but I remember a week or two ago she said they made an announcement, and I remember thinking at the time, yeah, that sounds a bit like strategy to bring back some of those people who were Conservative that moved over to Reform. I can't remember what it was. I think it was somehow connected with the whole migrant topic. Anywho, I think that's it for me this morning. I wish you all well. We'll hopefully be back for the Saturday night live stream as usual around midnight UK time. Today I shall probably be cracking on with finishing off my shipping from the holiday sale. I've sent most of it off already, but there's a few more still I need to do, and make a start on a commission. So I'm going to wish you all well. Have a lovely weekend. Hope you're enjoying the weather wherever you are. Look after yourself and your loved ones. Catch you on the next one.